There's something you're doing right now every single day that's quietly sabotaging your life. It's disguised as kindness, praised as generosity, and even celebrated as virtue. But beneath the applause, it's slowly erasing your sense of self. If you're tired of living with guilt, resentment, and silent rage, keep watching, because in this video, I'll expose exactly what you've been doing wrong and how one small shift can unlock a life where you no longer apologize for choosing yourself. So, with that being said, what we're going to be talking about today is the sacred power of selfishness. And as you can see from the overview, what we're going to be discussing more specifically is first the overview, then the lie of selflessness, the truth about morality, the power of rational self-interest, the legacy you leave, and finally the review and your action items for the day or the next few days. So, with that being said, let's talk about the lie of selflessness. So, selflessness is not what they told you it was. They twisted the word into something noble to keep you small. What they call selfless is often just self-erasure with good PR. It's the slow death of personal will disguised as virtue. When you're trained to please everyone, you stop noticing when you're being used. And you start to feel bad for even wanting to prioritize yourself, like it's a sin to have needs. They made you believe that the more you suffer, the more moral you become. But suffering doesn't sanctify you, it sedates you. It turns lions into lambs. You are taught that goodness means putting yourself last. In this twisted moral scale, you're the bottom rung. Your dreams, your energy, your desires, they're all supposed to come after everyone else gets theirs. It's not selflessness, it's self-abandonment. You weren't created to be a backup character in your own life. The more you give without question, the more they praise you. And yet you feel emptier with every thank you. They turned burnout into a badge of honor, as if bleeding for others is what makes you human. The world claps for the person who collapses from giving too much. But that's not morality, that's madness. You lie to yourself and call it love, but deep down it's fear. Fear of being judged, fear of being alone, fear of being called selfish. Selflessness is a weapon used against the unaware. Governments, religious corporations, they all thrive on your willingness to devalue yourself. They run on sacrifice, not theirs, yours. The more obedient you are, the easier you are to extract. You're expected to serve causes you didn't choose and people who wouldn't lift a finger for you in return. You're more controllable when you believe your own happiness is selfish. You're told you're good when you comply and selfish when you think for yourself. And every time you draw a boundary, they try to make you feel cruel. But it's not cruelty, it's clarity. Altruism, as they sold it, is often just ego in disguise. Many people act selfless not out of love, but out of the need to be liked. They want to be seen as good more than they want to be true. They'll bend over backwards just to look like saints, but inside they're bitter, resentful, and hollow. They're addicted to external validation. They need to be needed because they don't know how to be enough on their own. When you spend your life living for others, you forget how to live with yourself. You lose your center, you don't even know what you want anymore, and eventually something breaks. You either become numb or you explode, and both are signs that the selfless path was never sustainable to begin with. Selfless people often become the most secretly angry. They think giving will earn them love, loyalty, or peace. But when that doesn't come, they turn cold. Every favor becomes a debt they expect to be repaid. They won't say it, but they feel it. Silent resentment builds until it rots everything beautiful inside them. Instead of realizing they chose to betray themselves, they actually start blaming others for not appreciating the sacrifice. They wear their suffering like a crown, but nobody asks them to bleed. They stay stuck in cycles of bitterness, pretending they're moral when they're just miserable. A life built on self-denial is a life stripped of power. You don't grow when your only goal is to please others. You actually shrink, and every decision becomes a moral crisis. Every desire feels like a threat to your goodness. So you stop trusting yourself, you become dependent on others to tell you what's right. You live on autopilot, letting others choose your path. You wake up one day and realize you don't even recognize the life you've built. You start to wonder if meaning was ever real or just a lie fed to keep you tame. The truth is, everyone is selfish. The question is whether they're honest about it. Most people cloak their selfishness in moral language. I'm just trying to help, or I'm doing it for them. But underneath it all, there's always a personal motive. They refuse to admit they want something in return, so they suppress it and the tension leaks out sideways. That refusal eats at their soul. They never feel fulfilled, no matter how much they give. And real strength is admitting your desire and actually aligning with it fully. That's not cruelty. That's coherence. When you stop lying to yourself that you want things, you start living. You no longer need applause because your direction comes from within. And what they call selfish is often just self-aware. It's not wrong to say no. It's actually intelligent. It's not wrong to prioritize your mission. It's actually required. And you realize that the world doesn't fall apart when you stop playing savior. In fact, it often gets better because now you're operating from truth instead of performance. The real moral crime isn't selfishness, it's self-neglect. If you don't put yourself first, no one else will. And even if they do, you'll feel like a fraud. Come back to yourself. Reclaim your name. That's the beginning of real impact. Once you start to break the illusion, everything starts to shift. You feel lighter, sharper, like you just stepped out of a dream and into your own body. The fatigue fades because you're no longer draining yourself for approval. Your mind clears, the noise quiets, and you can finally hear yourself again. And when you hear yourself, you know what to do next. You start to want again, not for others, but for yourself. That desire is your compass, so follow it because it leads to the next layer of truth. With that being said, let's talk about the truth about morality. So you've been operating on someone else's moral code. From day one, they gave you rules you never agreed to. Rules about what's good, what's bad, what's selfish, what's moral. But none of these ideas actually came from you. They were injected, passed down, memorized, and never questioned. You inherited guilt for wanting things. You inherited shame for saying no. You are told your value comes from denying yourself, but that's not morality. That's control dressed as virtue. They made you believe that being moral means betraying yourself, that somehow you're a better person when you're in pain. It's a lie that goodness comes from suffering. True morality isn't about pain, it's about truth. And morality isn't about what others think of you. It's not about approval, it's not about fitting in, it's about inner alignment, about whether your actions reflect what you actually believe, not what you've been told to believe. You know when you're lying to yourself. You can feel it, that tension in your gut. That's not fear, that's misalignment. You don't need a priest or a teacher or a government to tell you what's right. You just need to stop bullshitting yourself. The real measure of morality is whether you can live with yourself, not just in public, but when you're alone in the dark, with nothing but your thoughts. You sleep better when you live cleanly. Not clean as in perfect, but clean as in honest. The entire structure of modern morality is upside down. They say that a good man is the one who sacrifices himself, who works tirelessly for others, who never puts himself first. But that's not virtue, that's decay. That's a recipe for collapse. And they glorify the man who dies for everyone, but they ignore the man who lives for something. It's not just misguided, it's weaponized. A moral code that rewards weakness isn't morality, it's mental slavery. The true moral person is not the one who gives everything away. He's the one who builds something strong enough to give from without destroying himself in the process. He doesn't sacrifice his foundation. He builds a structure others can lean on because it's rooted in his own strength. He gives because he wants to, not because he feels he has to. The highest moral act is to not betray yourself. When your words, actions, and desires line up, you become unshakable. That's real morality. That creates trust. Not performance, not some kind of pretense. And it's not about being good, it's about being integrated, about not leaking your soul across 1,000 false yeses. People respect those who are whole, even if they don't always like them. And the most ethical person in the room is often the one who refuses to pretend, even if it offends people. That kind of person has power because they're not living a double life. You don't owe morality to others, you owe it to yourself. If your morality only kicks in when others are watching, it's not morality, it's performance. True ethics come from choice, from decision, not pressure, not fear. The moment you stop needing others to approve of your goodness, you become unstoppable. You become your own compass. You stop needing maps drawn by broken men. And others begin to look to you, not for what's popular, but for what's true. You become the one who rewrites the code. Acting in your own rational self-interest is not immoral, it's moral. People hear the word selfish and picture greed, cruelty, narcissism, but those are distortions. That's not what this is. Rational self-interest doesn't mean harming others. It means not harming yourself for others. It's choosing what fuels your growth, your health, your purpose, not what robs you of it. You weren't designed to serve everyone. You were designed to master yourself. You can't lift others when you're broken. You can't inspire when you're empty. You can't lead when you've lost your own direction. You need a new moral code, one that actually works. And it starts with one rule. You are not allowed to betray yourself ever. Not for love, not for validation, not for peace. And you lock that in as a principle, and everything else gets easier. If something costs you your self-respect, it's too expensive, period. You build your life around what aligns, not what appeases. And you stop folding under pressure because you're not bending to fit anymore. You're shaping your world around you. And the moment you stop outsourcing morality is the moment you start creating your own legacy. Every decision you make becomes yours. Every action, every word, every move, an expression of your inner code. You move cleaner, you speak bolder, and you show up more solid. There's no guilt, no second guessing, just direction. Others notice, they feel the gravity. People are starving for permission to live like this. When you embody it, you give them that permission. You become someone who doesn't have to preach, you just are. And once your morality becomes an extension of your integrity, your actions evolve with it. And the next layer isn't about philosophy, it's about implementation. It's about how to live selfish, not just believe it. So let's talk about the power of rational selfishness. So selfishness without clarity is chaos. Selfishness with reason is power. The problem isn't that people are selfish. It's that they are selfish in dumb ways. Irrational, reactive, short-sighted. They chase quick wins, shallow validation, and ego spikes, and then they wonder why their lives are a mess. Acting on impulse and calling it choosing yourself isn't self-love, it's sabotage. Rational self-interest means you don't just think about what feels good now, you think about what serves the whole arc of your life. You need rules, not rules from outside, internal rules, a code, a standard, something that's unshakable. Rationality keeps your desires from eating themselves. It gives them form, direction, and order. The way you spend your time is the clearest proof of what you value. Most people claim they want freedom or greatness or peace, but their calendar tells the truth. They say yes to every obligation, every interruption, every request, and then they bleed out their focus drop by drop. Death by 1,000 cuts doesn't feel dramatic, but it does drain you just the same. When your time isn't your own, your life doesn't feel like it's yours either. Selfish people block out their mornings, they defend their energy, they treat their calendar like sacred territory. They don't justify it, they just do it. That's why they move further, faster, and cleaner. And if you don't control your schedule, someone else will, and they will fill it with everything but your mission. So saying no is not cruelty, it's precision. You're not here to be available, you're here to be effective. Every yes is a contract. Every no is a declaration. And when you say yes out of guilt, you're agreeing to betray yourself. And that has a cost, even though it looks invisible. A clean no is more generous than a resentful yes. People respect those who draw lines, not because they like it, but because it signals you actually respect yourself. And boundaries are a broadcast, and they tell the world what game you're playing. The wrong people will leave, but the right ones will rise. And you weren't put here to appease, you were put here to build. Selfishness lets you zero in on your craft. It gives you the headspace to go deep. It's what turns random efforts into world-class output. Distraction is death. You don't need more hours. You need more you in your hours. When your mind isn't hijacked by guilt or social pressure, your best work finally gets made. The world doesn't change because people care, it changes because people create. And that only happens when you're free enough to make without apology. Your contribution is not what you sacrifice, it's what you birth. So stop asking for permission, start producing, because you become what you tolerate from yourself. Rational self-interest isn't just about cutting others off, it's about raising the bar inside your own head. It's how you start showing up like someone that is worth trusting. You eat like someone who wants to win. You train like someone who takes themselves seriously. And you work like someone with a deadline from God. It's not about intensity, it's about consistency. You keep the promises you make to yourself even when no one's watching. Self-respect is not a thought, it's a track record. Every day, every task, every small decision, it's all casting a vote for who you are becoming. And eventually it adds up. You start to believe in yourself, not because of hype, but because of evidence. Now, rational selfishness makes you better for others as well, not worse. When you aren't drained, bitter, or resentful, you show up clearer, more grounded. You're not performing, you're being real. The people around you feel safer, and they know you'll tell the truth, not just what they want to hear. You become the one others can count on because you're no longer leaking or hiding. You don't beg for connection, you filter for resonance. And you don't need to manipulate people to stay, you just need to be so aligned that only the right ones will. And when you're not trying to prove your worth, love gets easier, cleaner, and realer. Now, giving from overflow is the only way it works long term. You don't help people by burning out. You help people by staying lit. And the staying lit requires fuel, sleep, space, solitude, stimulation, time to think, time to train. You don't treat those like luxuries. You actually treat them like oxygen. You bounce back faster because your baseline is higher. You can afford the hits. When your cup is full, you give from choice instead of obligation. And you don't guilt yourself into giving. You give because you want to, not because you have to. That's when your impact multiplies, when it's clean, powerful, and sourced from strength. The selfish become leaders because they can't be manipulated. When you're rooted in self-respect, flattery doesn't sway you and shame doesn't stop you. You make moves based on vision, not emotion. You stop being reactive and become proactive. People are drawn to that because most of the world is weak. Seeing someone who leads themselves is rare. It's magnetic. And you don't need to convince, you just become the proof. Others want to orbit you because you're not orbiting anyone else. And when you live selfish on purpose, it all starts syncing up. Your schedule, your habits, your boundaries, your focus, it all starts pointing in one direction. You feel aligned, you feel alive. You're not trying to do everything. You're doing what actually matters. It's quiet inside your head, not because everything's perfect, but because it's yours. And that's the power. You stop negotiating, you start executing. And when you live like that, the rest starts to shift too. Not just what you do, but what you mean, what you stand for, and what you leave behind. So let's talk about the legacy you leave. So whether you like it or not, you're leaving a legacy. Every day, you're adding bricks to the structure of your life. People are watching, decisions are stacking, and the version of you that shows up consistently, that's what the world remembers. Not the one you intended to be someday. You don't get remembered for how much you sacrificed. You get remembered for what you built. And if what you built was driven by guilt and fear and self-denial, that legacy dies the second you do. You've got one shot at this, and every time you choose the crowd over your compass, you trade legacy for applause. You don't build something real by being agreeable. You build it by being grounded. The most powerful people in the world are the ones who own themselves. You don't change others by preaching at them. You change them by becoming something undeniable. When your life is sharp, clean, aligned, they can feel it, and it forces them to confront the gap in their own. People don't want to be around perfection. They just want to be around conviction. And when your selfishness fuels a fire in you, it lights everyone around you. A man or a woman who leads him or herself becomes a lighthouse. People might not like them, but they watch them. They adjust themselves to their presence. When you're the calmest one in the room starts moving around you, and you give others permission by refusing to shrink. Every time you say no, every time you hold your line, every time you choose yourself without apology, you're showing others it's possible. Most people don't need more advice. They just need someone to go first. When you live free, it exposes where others are still enslaved. And true leadership isn't making others follow you. It's showing them how to walk their own path. You don't need a megaphone. You just need a spine. You don't inspire people by lowering your standard. There's always going to be pressure to shrink, to be less intimidating, to be more relatable. But that's not how you help people rise. That's how you keep them stuck. Acting smaller so others feel better isn't kindness. It's actually sabotage. If you make yourself digestible to everyone, you will eventually disappear. You want to lift people, then live like someone worth modeling. Be the one with structure, with direction, with fire behind their eyes. The louder your results get, the quieter you'll need to talk. And the most selfish people often give the most because they can. When you're full, you have more to offer. Time, money, energy, ideas. You're not giving scraps, you're giving surplus. You don't need to be asked. You want to contribute because it's clean. No guilt, no bitterness, just clear, strong, voluntary generosity. You're not pouring from an empty cup. You're actually flooding the room. And that kind of giving, that lasts. That scales. That actually helps. You don't have to die to be remembered. When you live selfishly, when you live intentionally, fully, you leave fingerprints on everything, on people, on ideas, on culture, and your name becomes a symbol of strength, a reference point, a trigger. Not because you were perfect, but because you are real. You build things that outlast you, systems, stories, movements, and years later, people still point to you and say, that's who made me think different. You're not selfish for wanting to matter. You're selfish if you don't. You don't need to die for something to be worthy of it. There's honor in building a life you're proud of. A life that's yours. A life that doesn't apologize for being sharp, focused, and intense. Stop handing out pieces of yourself to prove that you're good. Start stacking wins that feel clean, pure, and aligned. You get one name, one timeline, one reputation, so protect it, sharpen it, and make it undeniable. Your legacy is not one big moment. It's every single choice repeated until the world can't ignore it. You don't owe the world your comfort. You owe it your greatness. The price of greatness is selfishness. You give up comfort, you give up fitting in, you give up being liked, and in return, you get impact. It's a deal most people aren't willing to make, but if you are, the rewards are permanent. You don't disappear, you become something solid, something grounded, something that is actually built to last. And you don't drift into legacy, you design it. And it starts the moment you stop apologizing for being selfish. Once you understand this, really feel it in your bones, the question changes. It's not, is it okay to put myself first? It's how far can I go now that I finally am? So with that being said, let's discuss the review. We talked about the overview. We talked about the lie of selflessness. We talked about the truth about morality. We talked about the power of rational self-interest. We talked about the legacy you leave. We are at the review right now. And finally, your action items for the day or the next few days. Look at your life and ask, where am I betraying myself to be liked, to fit in, or to avoid guilt? And cut that out. Start with one area and fix it this week. Block time for yourself on your calendar, say no without explaining, and guard your energy like it's your job, because it is. Finally, start acting like your life is your legacy. Create, lead, move with clarity. Let people see what it looks like when someone chooses themselves for real. With that being said, I hope this was valuable. Thank you for being here, and I'm going to see you in the next one.